So this afternoon we are going to be talking about how apprenticeships can help solve your recruitment challenges. I think for all of us, it's difficult to fill vacancies and to have a good talent pipeline into our organisation. So in National Apprenticeship Week 2024, we are going to talk to you about the successes that employers have had with recruiting and developing staff through the apprenticeship process. So we're going to start with some introductions in a moment, because it's not just going to be me talking to you about apprenticeships. We're then going to talk very broadly about what is an apprenticeship and what's the values to your organisation, to your business. And we're delighted that it's not just going to be myself and our colleague John Browning from BBF talking about this, but we've got some employers who have experience of using apprenticeships for recruitment and developing talent and making a real impact in their organisations. They're going to be talking to us about their experience, and I'm going to be asking them questions. And if you have questions that you would like to ask them as well, it's also where you can put that in the chat as we go through the webinar. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the apprenticeships that are available at Bucks College Group, and also we've got John Brown is going to tell us what further support is available from BBF to help employers to navigate the skills landscape and find out whether apprenticeships is a good vehicle for your business. So we've got some introductions first of all. So you'll see on the screen that we have here this afternoon John Browning from BBF. So John, I don't suppose you would like to just come off mute for a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everybody. I'm John Browning from Buckinghamshire Business First, and I am Workforce Skills Manager, and it's my role to advise businesses on everything to do with training and skills. So if you've got you're looking to train and develop your staff and you don't know where to start, I'm your man.
Lovely. Thank you very much, John. I'm now going to ask Roy from Cube, Roy Kimani, if you'd like to come off mute. And Roy, if you could introduce yourself, your organisation, and really just give us just a little bit of background about your business's relationship with apprenticeships. I'm going to talk more in detail later, but just give us a scene setting as to how long have you been engaging with apprenticeships, what apprenticeships does your organisation offer?
Yep, sure, absolutely. So yeah, I'm Roy. I am the co-founder and creative director of Cube. Cube is a full-service production agency. So we create video content for businesses and brands that go on TV, online, or in internal sort of communication channels. And also, the place that I am is a virtual production studio, which we recently opened, that kind of supports our production and the production of other agencies and companies. So just to go back to the whole apprenticeship thing, I mean, we've had apprentices for probably since, well, about 4 to 5 years now. And actually one of our apprentices just finished his course and is now a full-time employee for us working. So we've seen it as a fantastic means to get talent into our industry specifically. But as an apprentice, you can almost kind of bespokely tailor an individual to exactly what your business requires, as well as for industry standards. So I kind of see it as a valuable means to bring new people in.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Roy. Now we've also got joining us Paul Skitt from Flannery, although Paul is only able to join us at 3:30. So if you bear with us, and then I will get Paul to introduce himself as he joins us this afternoon. And we also have Mark Denton from Zenopa. So I'm not sure if have we got Mark yet on the call?
Doesn't seem to have found his way in yet.
Okay,
Tracy. So carry on, and
okay.
we'll get Mark on the call.
Okay, well, and whilst we're waiting in terms of introducing Zenopa, those of you that have joined because it's been publicised, this event through BBF, you may have read in one of their latest circulars that there was a lovely article on Zenopa and Zenopa's apprenticeship program and the successes that they've had. So if you haven't read that already, I'd strongly recommend you go back and have a look at the BBF publication, and you'll be able to see and read a bit more about the program and actually how many apprentices Zenopa has in their organisation. And actually, just as I was giving them the big up, I think that Mark has just joined the webinar. Is that right, Mark? Are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much.
Oh, fabulous, fabulous. I was just telling everybody about the lovely article that was in one of the latest BBF publications about your organisation and how much you have embraced apprenticeships, which we will find out more as the webinar progresses. But I just didn't know whether you would like to introduce yourself, Mark, to the rest of the people who have joined this webinar this afternoon.
Of course. Hello. Yes. Sorry for the delay. I'm Mark Denton. I'm the Managing Director at Zenopa. Zenopa is a 50-person SME and a specialist recruiters. We're based in Penn, just near High Wycombe, Buckinghamshire, and been operating from there for 30 plus years.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you very much, Mark. So as I said, we're going to be finding out more about what Cube, Flannery and Zenopa, their experience of apprenticeships this afternoon in the webinar. But just before we ask each of these employers for their experience, it's worth us just talking about apprenticeships in the round. So for those who are on the call who may not have had apprenticeships in their organisations, this is just a little bit about what is an apprenticeship. So apprenticeships is something that is a protected term, and that means now that we can only call an apprentice if they are following what's called an apprenticeship standard that's listed on the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education website. And those are apprenticeships that have been approved to receive government funding for the training. And they are there's a full range of apprenticeships. There are hundreds of them now that cover occupations from entry-level occupations up to the highest level. So you can now become a doctor, a lawyer through an apprenticeship as a higher apprenticeship, but there are also lots and lots of career entry apprenticeships. And this is something, again, that BBF will be able to help with, is to provide some advice to help employers to determine what apprenticeships there are available and which providers in the area they may wish to engage with, of which we would hope, obviously, Bucks College Group would be one that you would come to talk to. So an apprenticeship.
Tracy, you've suddenly gone on to mute for some reason.
Am I back again?
Yep, you're back.
Oh dear. I'm sorry, everybody. I've had real problems with Teams today, and I was even worried that I wasn't going to be able to get on the webinar, as John will testify at about quarter to 3 this afternoon. So thank you, John, for letting me know if I have a little technical glitch. I've got no idea why that happened. So yes. You can see the information that I've put up on the screen here, but in essence, an apprenticeship is an agreement between an employer with their employee that they want to put them on a training program in order to reach occupational competency, and that competency is defined by an independent endpoint assessment where somebody who is qualified and experienced in that occupation determines that the employee is now working at that occupational competence level. And an apprenticeship is something where the training is something that the employee has in their contracted work time. And to be an apprentice, it means that they have an entitlement of a minimum of 20% of their contracted work time to train, to learn, to study, to practice their skills, to get to that occupational competency over a period of time. And an apprentice is paid at least the national minimum wage, which is either the apprenticeship wage or the wage related to their age. So that's a little bit about what is an apprenticeship and who's it for. I think it's really important that we think about apprenticeships as a vehicle for training, developing, recruiting staff. So apprenticeships are for anybody who is 16 years old and over, who has left full-time education. And it can be used as a way of developing an early career talent pool, bringing new people into the organisation from 16 years upwards. And it can also be used for upskilling the existing workforce. An apprenticeship is deemed, as we've said, it's a programme of training where an individual has a substantial training need. So there's an opportunity in looking at the existing workforce where they have a substantial training need to see an apprenticeship as a vehicle for carrying out that training, for them to be assessed by an independent person as to whether they meet that occupational competency. It's also a route for those that want to change career path. So it can be something that is used to change career path where someone wants to apply for an apprenticeship position in a completely unrelated occupation where they don't have all of that skills and experience. But it also can be used inside organisations where you want to retrain or reskill somebody in the organisation into a new job role. The key difference with an apprenticeship is that, as it says at the bottom, it's where there is a significant training need, because remember that an apprentice has a minimum of 20% of their contracted work time for training. And the minimum duration for an apprenticeship is 1 year. So there's got to be enough knowledge, skills, behaviour development to warrant roughly 1 day a week over that minimum term of a year in order to be deemed to be an apprenticeship. Now, there are lots of statistics that are out there in terms of what are the benefits to business, and we can see a few that are on here. Some of these have been taken from the 1,000 employers that were surveyed in response to the Education Skills Funding Agency wanting to know the impact that apprenticeships makes on businesses where they have apprentices in their organisations. So of those 100,000 that were responded to the survey, 74% said that they could see improvements in a product or service quality. And that's a really good statistic. And most apprenticeship programs, employers will work with their training provider to identify how the apprentice is going to showcase their skills and abilities through some type of change or improvement program. That's probably where we're seeing that such high percentage in terms of the new ideas that apprentices can bring into organisations. 78% say that efficiency has been improved. Again, apprentices generally in their programme are challenged to look at their organisation, the way that things are delivered, and to put forward suggestions for how improvements and efficiencies can be made. Over 80% agree that apprentices boost the bottom line, and that 83% of businesses are relying on apprenticeships to fill their skills gaps. Remember, that's whether they are recruiting apprentices into their organisation into new jobs, or whether they are using them to up and reskill existing members of staff. One of the concerns I know that employers have is that if I spend all of this time training staff, are they just going to leave? Are they going to take all of the good training that I've given them and then move on to work for other employers? And the statistics show that actually 90% of apprentices stay with their employers once they're qualified. So it is a good way of retaining talent in an organisation. And 92% of employers report improved motivation and satisfaction. And I think we will hear from the three employers that we have on the panel today that 92% of improved motivation and satisfaction is not just about the motivation and satisfaction of apprentices. It's actually the motivation and satisfaction of the wider workforce by having apprentices in their organisations. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment, and this will enable us, now that we've had a little bit about apprenticeships, to see if we've got any questions that have been posed from the information that we've seen just in those couple of slides, and also for us to start to introduce the employers that we have on the call today, for us to talk about the experience that they've had related to some of these statistics that we've talked about, with a focus today on how apprentices can help with that recruitment challenge. So, John, I'm just checking. I can't see that there's anything that's been raised as a question at the moment.
We've got one question come in so far, which is, do we need to have office premises to apply for an apprentice?
Okay, so no, you don't need to have office premises to apply for to have an apprentice. But what we do have to do is to make sure, this is the same for all training providers, that you have an environment where an apprentice is able to learn the occupation that you want to recruit them for. And that's what will happen when you engage with a training provider, is that they will talk to you about where the apprentice will work and where the apprentice will learn, to make sure that that is a suitable environment. And that's pretty important if you are a tradesperson, because it may be that actually you're spending most of the time out on the various sites that you're working at and you don't actually have an office space. But definitely something to talk to a training provider about, and they can help you to navigate that. So thank you very much for your question.
And another question's just come in, Tracy, which is about engineering, mechanical and electrical service engineering, and
Yes.
not being able to find provision in Buckinghamshire. And I think there's big news on that, isn't there?
There absolutely there is. We're delighted at Bucks College Group to be responding to the fact that the Local Skills Improvement Plan identified that there is a lack of engineering education in Buckinghamshire at the levels up to the higher education. We know that Bucks New Uni have got a higher education offer in engineering, and Bucks College Group will be offering full-time education and apprenticeships in both mechanical, electrical and electronic engineering in 2025. So we're actually working at the moment with local employers to help us to shape that engineering provision, so that we can make sure that when we open our doors for engineering, we are offering the apprenticeships and we're offering a curriculum that is focused on providing the talent pipeline for roles in the engineering space for our local employers from 2025 onwards. So my contact details are on the presentation towards the end. So for that person who's made the inquiry, or anybody else that wants to find out about engineering, please do contact me or go via BBF, and we will be able to talk to you in more detail about the type of engineering that's going to be available. Okay, Lovely. So we're going to have some time for some questions at the end. But what I'd like to do is to now bring in our panel, and I'd like to talk to them about some of the things, some of the statistics that we've seen and what their experience is. So the first thing, and I'll bring in each of the panel members one by one, is that we've just seen the statistics that hiring an apprentice it is a way of bringing new staff into your organisation, and it's reported that it can help with the cost of recruitment. And I think a lot of the businesses on this call would like to know, is this your experience? And could you give some examples of where you have seen the benefits around recruiting an apprentice, and any tips that you have around that? So if I can perhaps come to you first, Mark, from Zenopa, and then we'll go to Roy, and then hopefully we'll have Paul on the call by then.
Hello, Tracy. Yes, thank you very much.
Hello, Mark. Thank you.
Yes, in terms of recruiting, we're a recruitment business, so we kind of know a little bit about it. The short answer for us is we probably haven't saved money on recruiting, because we invest very heavily at the front end of finding the individuals we're looking for. So let's be more specific about that. We do level 6 apprenticeships, so degree apprenticeships, so they're 3 to 4 years long. So it's a very long-term investment. If you get it wrong, then that can be very painful. So we invest a lot at the front end and have been through a number of learning curves of that, of making sure we do invest on the front end. There are some hard cash figures that are cheaper. You know, the government website's free of charge, so you get the applications through. But we invest heavily in psychometric testing. We go through a lot of apprentices to find each one. You know, we're probably 50 to 100 applications to the one we take on, and we put them through an assessment centre as well, so that by the time they've gone all through those processes and the internal time that is applied to that, there's not a lot of difference in cost. But it's more about making sure we find the right person for our business.
Okay, and that's really helpful, Mark. And you're saying in terms of the cost for you to recruit, as if you're a recruitment organisation, what would you say in terms of that for employers, if they use a recruitment organisation and they recruit an apprentice, would that save in terms of the cost? I know that, for example, you have degree apprenticeships. We at Bucks College Group in the levels below the degree, and we offer a recruitment service to help employers to find an apprentice, where we will manage the advertising of the vacancy, the pre-interviewing of apprentices, helping to match to the right employer, and do some of that assessment centre work that you've talked about. Would you see that if you were looking at apprentices at a lower level, that might then save some of your recruitment costs?
I think definitely if you're going through that route, and you know, if you've got someone on a 1 year program, you wouldn't invest so heavily up the front end as you do for a 3 or 4 year program. And again, you know, our degree providers, and one of them provides that service, but they're based in London, so it's the wrong catchment area for us, because we're looking for people living in Bucks. So yes, you know, on the lower levels, definitely, you know, the providers identify people, and again, that government website provides a whole stack of people who respond to that as well.
Yes.
So those hard cash figures that you might have spent on advertising, etc., aren't there. It's just the commitment you're making to an individual, and this might sound quite harsh, you know, in terms of, you know, most people are on a 6-month probation. If they don't make it in the 6 months, then you've got the position of releasing them. That is still true with apprenticeships, but there's a moral position that actually you've taken on this person to get through their apprenticeship, and therefore getting it right is really important. You don't want to be in a position of releasing someone from their apprenticeship halfway through. There's no restrictions on you doing that, but it's just not a good thing to do. So trying to avoid it is where the cost comes in, to make sure you've got the person right. And if the university or training partner is doing that to make sure that they're capable and will get through the apprenticeship and be a good worker, then obviously that's fantastic.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your insight there, Mark. Really appreciated. Roy, can we come to you and find out really from Cube Studios experience for you what hiring an apprentice has been like for you, and whether you've seen as a small business that you have saved on recruitment costs?
Yeah, sure. I wouldn't necessarily say that we saved monetarily on recruitment costs, because when we took on our first apprentices, we were quite a relatively small business at the time, and also just inexperienced as people in business. But we know we did need some extra pair of hands in order to just fulfill our business needs and stuff. So the nature of our business is in production, you get a lot of for the non-technical tasks, you just need what they call a runner, just an extra pair of hands who can just fill in the blanks. And we used to get a lot of these kids come in, but on odd occasions you'd find someone who's extremely talented, maybe hasn't necessarily gone to a degree level, maybe had some experience, say like in Bucks College Group, and would just needed that extra industry experience. And the easiest means, and we saw the most effective way to get them to do that, was through an apprenticeship program. And I think I agree with Mark. When you do bring an apprentice in, it is a commitment to that person, and you have almost a moral obligation to make it work, and a commercial obligation. So you may not. Well, we found we didn't spend in terms of recruiting per se loads of money to get an apprentice. Well, to get an apprentice, but it's more the time, the time in getting them trained up and familiar with your business, not only whilst they're doing their apprenticeship as well. That is where we see that spend, so to speak.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Roy. And right on time, welcome Paul Skitt, who has arrived from Flannery. So Paul, if first of all you could just introduce yourself and maybe just tell us what apprenticeships Flannery offer and your experience with apprenticeships in Flannery.
Hi JC, thanks, and yeah, apologies for being late. Yes, I'm skills director at Flannery Plant Hire. We're one of the UK's leading plant hire companies with over 5,000 odd machines to hire, which I'm probably sure that you see around the place. So there's certainly a few of them around. We've been involved in apprenticeships for well over 10 years, probably 15 years or so. Mainly our main intake of apprentices are plant operative apprentices, so they're machine drivers. So we take on somewhere in the region of 30 to 40 a year on a national basis. We also do take on plant mechanics, so fitters of plant mechanics, sort of around 8 to 10 a year. And then in terms of support staff, we're starting to do more and more of that, and that's sort of there's a hire controller apprenticeship standard within our industry, which is sort of like customer service and hire desk. And increasingly we're looking at, and I'm currently looking at sort of more support areas, so finance, accountants, business administrators, etc. So but our main experience and where it really supports our business is in plant operations and plant mechanics. And the main reason we do it, because I think it's well known in our industry there's a big skills and employment shortage, and there's an aging workforce, and we need to bring new talent into the industry, and that's what we do. That's obviously the reason we do it, and we've got some good case studies of where people have progressed well in the business with an apprenticeship being the starting point.
And thanks, Paul. And you may not have heard that we were just talking as you joined about we'd seen some of the statistics about why are apprenticeships good for business, and one of the sound bites is that when you recruit an apprentice, it can save on the cost of recruitment. And we're asking the employers such as yourself, Is that true? Is that something that you see that apprenticeships do save on the cost of recruitment? What's your experience?
The honest answer is I don't think we fully know, because I don't think we've done significant analysis on it in the sort of longer term. My instinct would be that probably in the short to medium term, it probably costs more, actually, because we need to support them more, and they need a lot of mentoring and support, and actually getting this recruitment selection right is incredibly important for both the apprentice and the employer. So, but my hunch is, and we do need to do some more data on it, is that I think in the medium to long term, there's probably the return on investment, and I think that's probably where the statistics kick in. That my view is that probably over a period of a few years or so, then I think that's where you get your payback and return on investment. So I think short to medium term, probably not. I think and I don't know if the stats look over a longer period of time, but I think in the medium to long term you do, because I think you sort of mold those apprentices into your business, and I think then you get that sort of return on investment. But it's I'm sure like other employers on the course, apprentices virtually are only as good as the investment and the time you put in with both the apprentice and the provider, in my view. If you get those things right, you get your return on investment, but it might be further down the line.
I think that's very, very wise words, and I think there's apprenticeships is so true about begin with the end in mind. And if you want to have a very successful program, it is worth the investment in that recruitment process to make sure you're getting the right people into your organisation. And really important for businesses to hear this message, because an apprenticeship is a commitment over a period of time, and it's important to go into it with eyes open, which is why we thought it's so important to have employers on this call, this webinar this afternoon, who can speak from their own experience rather than just hearing about the statistics. And interestingly, that all three of the employers on this call have talked about it's a way of developing workforce in the longer term. So we're going to move on to ask them about that in a minute. But just to refer to the upfront costs of recruiting, one of the things to also bear in mind is that when you are recruiting apprentices into your organisations, if they are young people, there are employer incentives in terms of recruiting an apprentice. So if you are recruiting somebody from 16 to 18 or up to 24 with an education healthcare plan, there is an employer incentive of £1,000 when you recruit your apprentice. And that's the sort of thing that BBF, I hope, John, you would be nodding, is the sort of thing that BBF can help to provide some advice and direction for employers about the incentive, who it's available to, how it's accessed, and so on. So if we move on to look at the next thing about, it says that it's a great way of, apprenticeships are a great way of attracting, developing and retaining talent in your organisations. Is this a myth or is it reality? How have you managed to attract, develop and retain talent in your organisations? And do you have a top tip when considering recruiting in this way? So let's do this in a bit of a different order. So Paul, let's come to you first, and then we'll go to Mark, and then we'll come to Roy.
I think well, we certainly have been able to do it over the years, and we've got some good apprentices that started with us 5-10 years ago and still with the business, and working on some major projects. So I think I think that first, and it's probably a bit of a cliche, but that first sort of 3-4 months is critical, I think, and that goes back down to the recruitment selection and getting the right people on program. So people that really want to do it and are committed, and are reliable, good communicators. I think getting the right sort of your behaviours and sort of personality, I think, is important for us as a business. And then I think it's that support and mentoring that they require in those first 3 or 4 months to then guide them through that sort of, quite often it can be a sort of shock to the system that, maybe going from, going through the different education tiers and then into the world of work can be quite a challenge. It's a challenge for everybody, and I think that commitment and support from everybody, the provider, the employer, and the apprentice, and the apprentice's parents, quite often, I think that's hugely important. But I think once you get over that sort of first 3 to 4 months and make sure that support's there, then I think then you've quite often, in our experience, you've got a good apprentice and employer for a long period of time. So I think, again, it sounds like I'm saying a bit what I said before, but I think it's that you need all parties committed and committing to it with their eyes open, that it's actually not always straightforward, and there's a lot of work involved. And I think if you get those things right, and that selection process that meets whatever you as an employer need to do, but you've got to have the right people for your business, and there's a lot of work that goes into that.
And I heard you say earlier on, over your 10 years experience, you've got some case studies of where it's worked particularly well. So I think that's testament, isn't it, to the fact that that there are some golden nuggets in terms of employees that you've taken on as apprentices, and actually they've gone on to do good and great things for Flannery. Yeah,
we've got one. Gareth, who is he's a director of our Manchester depot. So he sits on the board now. He started as a plant and groundwork apprentice when he was 19 or 20, and he's on the board and running the business with the Flannerys. So he's done that in 22 years. So that's I guess that's the marquee one, but there's lots of other ones where people have progressed well in the business and are doing well.
Thank you very much, Paul. Mark, can we come to you?
Yes, I think it's a very good question, this one, Tracy, because originally, as per a lot of recruitment businesses, we hired graduates, and the problem we had with graduates was turnover of staff, and our break-even point for getting an ROI on a hire is 18 months, and they're often leaving before then. So it was just a financial disaster, and you can read about it. It's throughout the recruitment industry of hiring graduates being a major headache. And that's why sort of 6 years ago, we started hiring school leavers before the apprenticeship program started, and see, hang on, can we do this with 18-year-olds? And then we progressed. As soon as the apprenticeship schemes came out at that level, we did level 3 and then moved them on to level 6 as fast as we could. And they're in for 3 or 4 years on that apprenticeship scheme. The first ones did a level 3, followed by a level 6. So they were in 5 years into the apprenticeship scheme. Most of them, if you recruit them right, go all the way through. That they're on our ROI probably coming through within a year in terms of return on investment, and then you've got 3 years of good growth. We're a very commercial organisation, so we have an accounting apprentice, and operations apprentice, and a couple of marketing apprentices, but majority 20 plus are recruitment apprentices. And it's a commercial career, so they can earn very well. So we have some of these apprentices before finishing are getting up to 80k plus in terms of income. And on that, you're not paying national insurance, because under 25, there's no national insurance contribution at 13.8%. So there's a good return there. 2 of our first apprentices are now leading our USA expansion plan. So this year, the 2 of them wanted to do that. They've then got one of our school leavers have joined them, who started with us 7 years ago. And we hired some graduates to kick that off. And October this year, that team of 7 should be going out to the USA, led by our 2 original apprentices, who are turning the world upside down. And literally, our apprentices, by the time they've been in our business 2 years, they can go and see MDs and have very successful conversations. They grow at a fantastic pace, better than any of the normal degree people. When we go to the universities and we talk about the apprentices, they compare them to the full-timers, and because they're in work, they're just years ahead. So 3 to 4 years, and then most of them want to stay afterwards. Our first marketing one moved on. I mean, they did very well with us, but with small B2B services, and they moved to Canon printers to get some big product experience, but a marketer, you'd expect that.
Yeah.
So all the rest have really wanted to stay on. So that's great.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Mark. Fantastic to hear the success of Zenopa's apprenticeship programme. Look forward to reading another update in the BBF in a not too distant future as to how it goes with the States. Roy, can we come to you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for us, I mean, we've only ever had 2 apprentices, and those that we have are still here. I think it's just only the nature of our business. We really struggled to actually find an apprenticeship program that was fit like for the job functions that we have within production, especially at the level that were coming in. So we had to, invest that time in kind of training them up to try and almost bespokely tailor them and what they were doing in an apprenticeship for the sake of our business. But yeah, I think it's like with anything, if you find the right person who's committed to the business and you're willing to invest the time in them, then of course they will stay. And if they do have to leave, well, you'd hope that you've left them, better off in order to go and get jobs elsewhere. That's kind of how we approach it, really. If ever that day does come, they will wish them all the best. We just hope that, yeah, what they gain from their apprenticeship and their time with us is of value to them.
Thank you, Roy. And I think it is really important, I said right at the very beginning, is to work very closely with the training provider to ensure that the apprentices are working on projects within the organisation, that the employer is going to get that return on investment, is to look at how the apprentices can be given meaningful things to do that will demonstrate their capability, but equally give that tangible benefit to the organisation for the investment in that apprenticeship programme. One of the next questions I wanted to ask is that it says about apprenticeships helping existing employees to develop new skills that's relevant to their jobs. So I think that there's 2 strands to this. I think that there is the way of using the apprenticeships to reskill and upskill staff in an organisation, so they become apprentices, whatever they are following as an apprenticeship programme. But I've certainly seen, working alongside apprenticeships now for nearly 15 years, I've seen the benefits of the staff around the apprentice and how it has developed them as individuals and their skill sets and behaviours. So I know I've seen that, but I'd be quite interested to hear from our panel 2 things. Have you used apprenticeships to upskill or reskill existing staff? And then the second question is, what have you seen as the knock-on effects of that broader development of staff by having apprentices in your organisation? So if I can perhaps come first to you, Roy, and then to Mark, and then to Paul.
Yeah, so with the apprentices that we've had, as far as the existing staff at Cube, we've almost used them as a means to kind of introduce the more junior staff to management, right? So if you have an apprentice of whom has a particular course to follow, this member of staff was perhaps looking to gain some experience as a manager, then I think having an apprentice by their side is a good way for, I guess, both individuals to learn. Yes, they will have an overseer of someone who's more experienced to kind of ensure that that person is being looked after. But I think it can be used as a means to kind of help your more junior staff grow up, in a sense. Like, here's a bit of responsibility. This is someone you got to look after. They're kind of studying your role anyway, so who better than you to help them? And yeah, we've seen that to be just amazing.
Thank you very much, Roy. Mark.
Yes, very similar to Roy. When you bring them in, it presents the mentoring opportunity for everyone across the business, and so everyone can have a go at that and enhance their skills, and really find out, whether management's really for them or not, without going through the painful process of being a manager straight away. So yes, there is that benefit definitely there. The other thing is that you've got the apprentices in our case for 3-4 years. You've got to have a much more structured program for them, which means you've got to review all your processes and what you're doing. So a side effect is how you closely examine your business, and how you remodel it to be able to grow people very quickly in a structured way. So there are other operational benefits that come out of that then go across the whole business. So it forces you to do some things that you probably wouldn't do, but being forced to do it makes your business more productive.
I think that's very, very well put, Mark, and I can see that Roy is nodding in complete agreement. A nod and 2 thumbs up, so that's fantastic. Paul, what have you got to add to that?
We're a bit different from that point of view, just by sheer sort of logistics point of view, is that the majority of our apprentices are operators. They're out on site quite often, in the middle of a field, or so we have to sort of, so their exposure then to the wider sort of support team and the wider team is more limited if we didn't intervene. So it is more limited just naturally. We then have to try and intervene to then ensure that our apprentices do come to our various depots and integrate a bit more with the wider team. So we do sort of apprenticeship sort of peer days where they spend time with each other and then get to know other parts of the business. So that's how we sort of do it. And then our managers and sort of support staff can feed off that. And then we do encourage our apprentices to sort of feedback on processes and how we could work better, and so they get an opportunity to feed into the general sort of development and progress of the business. So but just the nature of our business means that actually a lot of our apprentices are more just geographically and logistically disparate from our core operations. So then we have to, as I say, we have to intervene. I think as we take on more support staff apprentices, which we're very much planning in the next year or two, then I think that's when we'll see that sort of benefit where their energy and new skills and new take on things will have a really positive impact on the business.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Well, I'm conscious of the time, so what I'm going to do is to just summarize a little bit about what support is available, finish that off, and then open the floor for questions either to BBF, to myself, Bucks College Group, or to our panel members, from anybody that has any questions. So just for to talk about the apprenticeships that are available at Bucks College Group. So you can see that we've got a slide here as to the range of apprenticeships that are offered at Bucks College Group. We've already said at the top of this presentation that we're introducing new apprenticeships all the time. So we will be delighted to be working with Flannery later on this year in terms of working with them to introduce the plant operative Flannery apprenticeships in Buckinghamshire. We're also going to be launching apprenticeships in engineering in 2025, civil engineering, and we're also looking at apprenticeships in things like renewable technologies later on in 2024. So any questions that anybody has on any of these apprenticeships, my contact details and the college's contact details will be available for you to reach out to us. Now, John, do you want to tell us about BBF Power Hour and the support that's available through BBF to navigate a little bit more about apprenticeships in the Bucks area? Are you there, John?
Thanks, Tracy. So for those people on the call today who are inspired to take on an apprentice, we do run a workshop called the Power Hour Demystifying Apprenticeships. The next one is on the 28th of February. I've put the link in the chat. And what we do there is to go through the nuts and bolts of taking on an apprentice, understanding the standards, how you can find a really good training provider, understanding the structure of the apprenticeship scheme and the assessment process, and very importantly, how the funding works. So we go through all of that. And then BBF, as many people on the call will know, is a business support organisation. And I spend a lot of time talking to businesses on a one-to-one basis about how to take on an apprentice. And anybody is welcome to call me. Our services are completely free. And what we'll try and do is to identify suitable training providers for your business.
Lovely, thank you very much, John. John's contact details are on the slide, but I'm sure you will know if how to contact John and BBF. So we're going to now come to the point where we are here for the last few minutes to answer any questions that you have around apprenticeships, or if there's anything that you would like to ask the panel members today.
We've got some that have come through on the chat as you've been talking, Tracy.
Okay.
Shall I quickly whiz through those?
Yes, please.
So the first question was, how are apprenticeships paid? How are apprentices paid? And I think this is from somebody who feels they wouldn't be able to pay until the apprentice is starting to generate some extra income. So this is a really interesting question, which applies to lots of businesses.
Okay, so would you like me to answer, John, or would you like to answer that one?
You can answer, Tracy.
Okay. So I'll go first, and John, you can always interject. So apprentices have to be paid at least the national minimum wage, the apprenticeship wage, and that is from day one of their employment. So they are an employee, they are a member of staff. If they are 16 to 18, the employer incentive, which is £1,000, that can help to cushion the onboarding of the apprentice and contribution to their wage and other costs in the first couple of months. I would also say that obviously I don't know the sector of the person who's put the question, but it's important to talk to your training provider about the scaffolding of the skills and behaviours that the apprentice is taught, so that they can become economically active within your organisation as quickly as possible. So say, for example, you are a hair salon. It may well be that the things that they learn very quickly is about washing hair and maybe doing full head colours or blow dry bars or something like that, where they can be earning money, or even looking at upselling for products for clients when they come into the salon. So it's important to understand the training plan to look to see how do you get the apprentices working for you and making an impact to your business as quickly as possible.
Okay, the next question was, what about civil and structural engineering? I know that BNU is looking at that. That's something that you're looking at too. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
The next question was just kind of, where do I start? Well, coming onto our Demystifying Apprenticeships Power Hour would be a good place to start, but you can always just give me or Tracy a call and we'll point you in the right direction, take you through the process, help you find a training provider, whatever you need. Next question was, where do you advertise? I think I can answer this one very quickly, Tracy. You can advertise just like you normally would for any employee, but there is a very good website called Find an Apprenticeship, which we urge all employers to advertise on. And it is the place where everybody who's looking for an apprenticeship will go and search for an apprenticeship. So it will find the person that you're looking for. And that's a government website, and it's free to put stuff on there. You can also advertise for free on the Bucks Business First and Bucks Skills Hub websites. Here's a question for you, Tracy. If they are 16 to 18, do staff need DBS checks?
No, staff don't need DBS checks if apprentices are 16 to 18. However, training providers will meet with the employer and go through a due diligence process, which is around health and safety, for which safeguarding is part of that. So we will talk about what's needed to have a young person in your organisation, what risk assessment changes and things that you may need to have in order to protect the young person and also the staff working with the young person.
There's a question here about finding a provider for a marketing apprentice. That person, please come and talk to me. Ruth, I think, please come and talk to me, because I'll be delighted to try and help you find the right provider for that. And then finally, a question's just come in. Does it have to be full-time or a part-time role to be an apprentice?
To be an apprentice, it can be a part-time role. There are considerations when you take on an apprentice on a part-time basis. There are minimum requirements in terms of the number of hours, and it's something that either John or I would be very happy to talk about the specifics. But basically what it means is that to be an apprentice, it has to have a training plan. The training plan will have a certain number of hours. If you have somebody that's part-time, naturally what that means is that the training plan gets longer. So rather than the apprenticeship being, for example, 18 months, if it's a full-time person, it then can become something like 24 months. And that depends what sector you're in. So if you are working in education and you've got to consider, the role would be something like a teaching assistant, for which there's term time only, there are certain adjustments in terms of the minimum number of hours that an apprentice can work. So it's not a black and white answer, but it's one that is, please, if you're considering and you're thinking about part-time, come and talk to me or to talk to John about the specifics. Happy with that, John?
Yeah.
Does that bring us to the end of the...
That's the end of the questions on the chat.
And look at that for timing. So I reckon that we have just about met our 4 o'clock, bringing this to a close. Oh, sorry, Mark, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I've just double checked on the government website for those people concerned about the minimum pay and minimum wage. We don't use this, but the first year of an apprenticeship, the minimum wage is £5.28 for a 19-year-old plus. Whereas, as you're probably well aware, from April, the minimum wage for a 21-year-old is going up to something like £12 an hour. So there is a big difference, and if you're in certain industries where that can make a big difference, then your first year that could help you out considerably to taking these people on and getting them trained up.
In addition to the national insurance savings that you mentioned earlier, Mark.
And also there are pension savings, because pension contributions come in mandatory from age 22.
Lovely. That's really helpful. Thank you. So thank you to everybody who has taken the time out to join us for this webinar this afternoon. A big thank you to BBF for doing the hosting and the organising for us. And most importantly, a very, very, very big thank you to Roy from Cube Studio, from Mark from Zenopa, and from Paul from Flannery's, of giving up your time and talking to us about your experience of recruiting and working with apprentices in your organisation. Huge thank you to you for giving up your time to do that. And I hope those people who have joined the webinar this afternoon have felt that the insights from these employers have been beneficial to you to hear about.